Hello everyone, I want to welcome you back to a very special video. Today is going to be a very long video because I'm covering the rise and fall of Captain Flameheart, summarising the new Sea of Thieves Heart of Fire novel into about an hour long video. This video took an absolute age to make, so please do give it a like if you enjoy or you just found it helpful or whatever, and subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest Sea of Thieves news as and when it comes out. As well, if you've got any questions about the novel, please do post them down in the comments below. I'm more than happy to try my best to answer them. I'm very clued up with the novel after making a video and reading it, well, probably a couple of times at this point. But anyways, I hope you enjoy. There's not much left to say, so let's just get straight into it. Welcome to the story of Captain Flameheart in the First Pirating War. Captain Flameheart was a name that quickly rose to the Sea of Thieves. For our tale begins with the crew of the Magpie's Wing, the legendary ship of the Pirate Lord, crewed by Mercia, Shan, and their newest crewmate, George. Our time period takes us roughly 2 decades before the events of Heart of Fire take place, where they're on course to discover the mythical Shroudbreaker, to part the fog and reach the enigmatic land known as the Shores of Gold. It is here, however, that we already know the fate of this crew on this particular day. The crew of the Magpie's Wing reached an island which was quite possibly home to the Shroudbreaker, but something was off. Someone was there. A volley of cannonballs hit the wing and so called the crew back to their vessel. The thought of Flameheart abusing the Shroudbreaker's power sickened Ramsey, and so they took the decision to flee. They soon realised, however, that the burning blade was catching up and confrontation was inevitable. They turned around and engaged in combat. After exchanging rounds of volleys, the burning blade fired something extraordinary. A cannonball gleaming with purple light. And when it hit, did nothing to the boat. Quick to retaliate, George went to fire back, but then they all realised their cannons refused to move. Another, this time green light, hit the boat, and all of the crew's bones seemed to seize up. Ramsey is not completely fleshed though, and his wooden peg leg could not seize up, and so with all his might he threw the chest containing the ancient key overboard. There was not much left to do now, and so they left Flameheart as far away from it as possible, before succumbing to his wrath. They beached the wing as it met its final end on a small sandbank, not marked on any map, whilst taking any valuables they had ashore. It was the burning blade that changed course for a new ship on the horizon. The events of Heart of Fire take place 8 years before Pendragon's fateful encounter with a group of pirates, who tracked down the Ashen Dragon and freed Flameheart from his tomb. This story begins at Sanctuary Outpost, where a young shipwright, Jill, is an apprentice under Suki. Jill longs to embrace the pirate's life and seeks life off the outpost, and so this takes her to the crew of the Morningstar. Try as she might, every encounter she has with Captain Eli Slate seems to not go well. However, on an evening where the tavern is brimming with life, she catches Eli when he returns to his vessel, where he reveals that he's been avoiding her and recommends she sail under some less expectant rogues instead of the seaworthy experienced pirates Eli expects. However, with the crew of the Morningstar short-handed and on a very lucrative merchant assignment, the captain allows her to join for just one voyage. While underway, she takes the post in the crow's nest after a sloop is spotted, and as the sloop nears, her bow practically touches the captain's cabin balcony of the Morningstar. Fontaine and Jill rush over there, and a pirate who reveals herself as Rook boards the Morningstar and threatens Jill to give her all shares, as she managed to board them without anyone seeing her, and so it's the rules that she must hand over her possessions. Fontaine pushes her into the water. Fontaine seemed to notice something off about Rook that Jill seemed to not, and with the promise of her doing the heavy lifting at their destination outpost, Fontaine promises to explain more when they get there. Now we're going to change perspective. Let me set the scene on Golden Sands Outpost, in the Captain's Head Tavern, where we're introduced to a man called Harry Harkley, and news of Flameheart's rising power has swept across the Sea of Thieves. And as a man who doesn't take kindly to piracy being made another form of servitude, he naturally takes the side of Flameheart. Argument breaks out in the tavern over the matters, with Harry particularly abusing a young gold hoarder named Hugh, and naturally the argument turns into a brawl. The tavern keeper, Tina, stops the mess before it escalates too far, and chucks Harry and 3 people that ended up simply in the wrong place at the wrong time standing by him, out. They meet on the dock together and introduce themselves. Harry's friend, Corinne, a young lad with a particular taste for cooking nicknamed Scraps, and Jules, a pirate with not really any current course. United by experience and beliefs of Captain Flameheart being their saviour, they steal a galleon named the Prideful Dawn to set sail on. And once out and safely away from the outpost, they agree to form an official crew. It is there Harry and Corinne tell Jules and Scraps the nature of their ventures. They are seeking to join Captain Flameheart. The Morningstar crew have now arrived at the outpost, and Fontaine is busy explaining to Jill that more and more skeletons seem to be popping up around the Sea of Thieves. Keen as anything to wreak havoc, and that's what he thinks is happening to Rook. They finish delivering the cargo, and just as Jill was about to be dismissed, an unexpected guest shows up inside the cabin. Slate, pistol drawn, lowers it, and then states, "Have you lost all those manners in that hideout of yours?" With that, the stranger apologises and states he was told to deliver a message as swift as anything, urgently. He then announces, "The Pirate Lord wishes to speak with you. Mostly about the end of the world." They get led down into the Legends hideout where Ramsey informs them of a grim future with slim hope. They're gearing up for war, and he has received a message from someone that requests only to be answered by the Pirate Lord, and he is appointing the Morningstar in his stead due to an unknown risk. Once the crew of the Morningstar, Slate stays behind and interrogates Ramsey about what the hell is actually going on, and why them. To which he replies he needs someone neutral. His envoy and his pirate legends are too conspicuous for their own good, and whilst he understands the risks of Slate and his crew, the Sea of Thieves is gearing up for war. A war that they cannot win. They'll make a good show of it, but nothing can match the power of the Burning Blade, and so the Morningstar set sail for the location of the messenger. Once they get there at last, they knock in the rhythm set on the note on the door to some sort of camp. "Oh, you're here at last," a skeleton replied. The Prideful Dawn set sail out to get something of value, an offering, so to speak, to Flameheart. Tom Toggs was a simple pirate, retired as you might say. He spent his days as a low-class pirate outside the Shroud, and now that he was getting on a bit, he found his way into the Sea of Thieves, living out the last of his days as a fisherman. The crew of the Prideful Dawn found him and his boat at Devil's Ridge and played a nasty trick. They looked after him, cooked him a meal, but then Tom realised they wanted something in return, to which he continually stated he doesn't have anything. Harkley, however, spotted his flag. Tom didn't mind parting with it. It was an old flag he found after all, so he began to take it down, but Harkley interjected and said, "Oh, don't bother with that. We wouldn't want you wasting all your energy when there's a far quicker method, now that we're friends." He went on his cannon and fired at Tom's mast. He then proceeded to take the flag, leaving Tom stranded there. Just as they were about to leave, Tom insulted Harkley, and to which the punishment he gave him was locking him inside his own brig, with the food still on the cooker. Heading for Flameheart's lair now, the crew of the Prideful Dawn slowly approached a shipwreck graveyard. Surrounded in fog, they were then approached by massive port cutlasses, which opened for them. They soon learned that Flameheart's fortress was made of all the unwilling victims he'd sunk. They were greeted by Captain Adara, who asked what their purpose was. To which Harkley stated they have an offering for King Flameheart, and if he accepts, he would like them to hear his request to join their cause. Adara accepts, but then says, "You'll surrender your weapons and be put in a holding cell until your fate is sealed. You will either join us at our king's decree, or be clapped in irons for the rest of your life. I'm sure Warden she has plenty of space in our dungeons for you." Here we take a short break from our tale of fire and ash. Amid the fire and fury of war, a boy was born, and this boy was a bully. He grew up in school with many friends, for it was easier to join a bully than to oppose them. The day that boy became a man was the day that he found out bigger bullies existed than him. On this day, the Grand Maritime Union came knocking on the boy's door, and stated that his father had been found to be a pirate. The boy will never be allowed to join the Navy, and his house is to be searched, and anything of value taken in compensation for his father's misdeeds. That day, a member of the Grand Maritime Union left with a bloody nose, and the other had to crawl. Deciding that a pirate must have been quite a fine sort of fellow, the boy, who is now a man, went down to the docks for 3 days watching sailors on a ship, and on the 4th day he boarded it, put a sword to the captain's throat and threw the first mate overboard, and informed the sailors they'd be setting sail immediately. This man took the name of Captain Flameheart, for people used to say you could see the fire burning in his chest whenever he saw the Grand Maritime Union sails on the horizon. He'd tear their ships to pieces battle after battle, and then one day he simply disappeared, to which few knew was the Sea of Thieves. There he found joy, battles, gold, and the fruits any pirate could imagine. On one particular battle though, he was searching for a memento in the water of floating wrecks, to which he found a newborn. Whether it was remorse, guilt, a chance to continue his lineage, even his closest crewmates could not say. He took the newborn and ordered they return to his estate with the quickest speed. It was there Flameheart left the newborn and set out about a new ship. He found a position aboard the Burning Blade, a legendary ship, as first mate. He spent time working under a captain, and one night the crew mutinied. They drank a toast to their former captain out of chalices found in an obsidian casket. His visits to his home became increasingly infrequent, for they didn't know it, but their misdeeds had cost them dearly. Slowly over time, they didn't notice hardly any rations were being used, or that you really could see the fire burning in their captain's chests. By the time they accepted their fate as skeletons, Flameheart had lost any desire to see his son one last time. His attacks increased with ferocity. For anyone who stood in his way, Flameheart would cut down. The crew of the Morningstar were shocked to see a skeleton. He reveals his name as Edmund, who used to be a part of Flameheart's original crew. However, not so long after Flameheart started rising up to power, Edmund stood up to Flameheart, saying what he's doing is wrong. Flameheart chose to exile Edmund to where he is now. The Morningstar's crew are skeptical, but Edmund explains he could see where Flameheart was leading them. Picking on the defenceless ships for sport or burning an outpost to the ground was wrong. Edmund goes on to explain who the Ancients are, and that they had a powerful understanding of magic and forces outside of our imagination. He believes such understanding was fashioned to create a weapon, one capable of defeating Flameheart. He's confident that his life's work would lead him to a mural deep in the ancient isles that will reveal more about this weapon, how and where to find it. Begrudgingly and after much persuasion, the Morningstar agrees to take Edmund passenger aboard the ship and take all his belongings on board. The Morningstar begins to get underway towards the mural. At night though, Edmund hears a strange voice that says, "The next move is mine." In an instant he's alert and upright, to which he thinks he's just hearing things. Jill notices a small box in the corner of the room covered in glyphs, with the lid knocked slightly ajar. The Morningstar arrives at Devil's Ridge and they begin looking for the mural. After searching everywhere they eventually find it, masked in some bushes. Not understanding their meaning, encrypted in an ancient language, Edmund copies it down, and Slate blows the mural up. After a brief consultation with Edmund, the Morningstar depart for the nearest outpost. Jill climbed atop the crow's nest and looked towards their destination, which was a shame. Because if she'd been looking backwards above the rocky peak that gave Devil's Ridge its name, someone watched the Morningstar depart. The crew of the Prideful Dawn are starting to get anxious. Their captain was taken by Dara, and the rest of them have been left alone. And just when they think their fate is sealed, Harkley returns and Adara releases them from their cells. However, they notice that Harkley's arm is bandaged up. Adara mentions, "Your captain has done much to prove your loyalty." And when questioned, Harkley doesn't give a clear explanation of what's happened, only that he took an oath of loyalty for all of them. They discover their boat has been resupplied by Flameheart's forces, and they are told of their assignment inside the captain's cabin, that there's a crew of cowards who are desperately trying to find a weapon that they think will turn the tide of the war on them. They've been tasked with seeing if the weapon exists, and putting a stop to their little scheme. The crew also noticed a strange box in the corner of the cabin. Only when the Prideful Dawn docked at Devil's Ridge did the captain emerge from his cabin wearing a pair of gloves and a long coat. And Devil's Ridge, and they encountered Rook hiding in the trees. When quizzed about who was here, she explains about the Morningstar and starts drawing symbols in the sand as to what the message on the mural was. It's revealed that the message is in a language that the Ancients used, recently revived by Greymarrow, and Rook can read it, as Rook is friends with him. She explains there are 3 keys that are required to unlock the weapon, and so it's decided that the Prideful Dawn will go for the second key first. When questioned about Rook being a liability by Karen, Harkley replies, "I'll slip word to Adara about her soon, but for now, we'll let her have a sleep." Before Karen has time to ask how to tell Adara, Harkley knocks Rook out and leaves her on the shore of Devil's Ridge. Karen then debates with the rest of the crew about mutinying against Harkley once they have the weapon, taking over the seas for themselves. The crew of the Morningstar meet with Madame Olivia in hopes that she can translate the mural. and before Madame Olivia even hears their request, she asks them to save their breath, as she will unfortunately not help them, even if it is within her power unless she gets something from them. She explains there's a troubling situation arising in Ancient Spire Outpost, where an Order representative called Madame Omina has lost both the trust and the trade of those of the Outpost, and after doing some digging, Olivia has learned that a gold hoarder named Hector had started a deceitful campaign against Omina, and so the crew of the Morning Star are sent to sort the issue out. Upon confronting Hector, Slate learns of the deal between the Order of Souls and the Gold Hoarders, that the Order sells maps to the Hoarders after learning the secrets from the skulls. Hector is concerned about how long it'll take before the Order thinks about cutting out the middleman, and so he's simply aligning the Gold Hoarders with their best interests. After being questioned about only they have the keys, Hector says that if anyone is going to figure out how to break the magic locks, it'll be the Order with that voodoo nonsense. So he asked Omina to sign a contract saying she won't work with anyone who isn't a gold hoarder, and after she refused, he started slandering her. After much further arguing, Hector refuses to apologise and states don't even think about threatening him, as the leaders of the Gold Hoarders don't take kindly to employees being threatened. Slate calmly walks away from this. Hector was a happy man that day. It had been a good day for business, so good in fact that he stored away some of the gold that the Hoarders earned that day in his little stash beneath the tent to be shipped away to his own hideout. Being such a good day, he was making his way up to the Unicorn for a drink, when he spotted something shining on the bridge. Upon further inspection, it was a trinket. Not worth too much, but a nice amount. As he went to pick it up, he saw something in the cave. A figure, and went to investigate. As he went up to it, his mysterious assailant lurched onto him, and two bony hands grabbed around his neck and began to choke the Gold Hoarder to death. Hartley, the Pirate King, roared with laughter, and all his loyal crews did the same, piling tribute all around him. Hartley looked into the eye sockets of Captain Flameheart before him, and the terror-stricken face of the Pirate Lord beside him. With the ancient weapon in Hartley's hand, it glowed with power. It flowed and changed from a sword to a great big poleaxe, and finally to an enormous hammer. With a satisfying crunch, Hartley brought the hammer down on the two greatest pirates before him, cracking the floor. The cracks spread around the room, finding their way up and spiraling around the pillars, and licks of flame following in the cracks' wake, growing larger and larger as more of the room fell away. Worried about the immense heat and the destructive force of the blow, Hartley went to the doors of the palace seeking fresh air and salty water. Here was a beach, but the ocean was bubbling and roared there too. Ships went up in flames and rocks turned a ghostly white. Hartley felt a hand on his shoulder, and he must have been a child, for the figure held him in a vice grip overhead. He always had done. "Harry, you bleeding roach, you been bruising again, lifting again." "No, da," Harry insisted, pain travelling through his veins. "It was only a bit of fun, we were only playing, we didn't mean anything by it." He looked in mute, even though the shadowy figure of his mum was making dinner, but said nothing. Just continued to chop away at dinner, every motion of the knife counting the seconds before Harry's inevitable punishment. Chop, chop, chop. Harry was being dragged away now, and the burning ships were replaced by a great, soaring, roaring fireplace, bigger than the perdition itself. Chop. Harry tried to explain, but he wasn't being dragged anymore. He was walking towards the inferno himself, his legs betraying him. Chop. Harry's arm jerked outwards of its own volition, fingers twitching as they inched towards the blazing brightness. He couldn't resist. There was no free will left in him now, as his hand began to blacken and crumble from the ashen wind of the roaring fire. He could only watch in dread as more of his arm gave way to the flame. Chop. The dream faded away as Hartley woke up in his cabin, as reality waved back into existence. The pain his arm was in, however, was all too real. Never mind, the crew of the Prideful Dawn had arrived at the second island Rook had marked on their map. However, it was only when they stepped on the island that they realised someone was inhabiting it. They discovered it was Merry Merrick, Karen's old crewmate. In his usual drunken state we all know and love, and as cheery as always. After being asked what he was doing all the way out here, he said he came here looking for inspiration, a way to fill his noggin with thoughts of old times and then put them onto a parchment in a new song. He can't seem to find his muse anywhere on the seas, but the legends and stories of a temple like this can bring. It's bound to set his imagination rolling. Now, of course, this was sheer dumb luck for the crew of the Prideful Dawn, knowing there's a temple here, and they learn they're actually standing on the roof of it. The whole place is underground, but there's an entrance over yonder. After making preparations to go caving, they were finally ready, and after a descent and a short walk, they ended up in the temple's main chamber. An enormous circular room taller than any steeple with a sloping floor that dragged away into a central aperture filled with water. Beneath that there was yet another great chamber, but the opening was blocked by thick obsidian bars. After much exploration, they spy a box down blocked by obsidian bars as well, past the chamber blocked by obsidian bars. Corinne makes the decision to jump down, but there really was only one way in or out. After more exploration, Jules and Scraps come across a mysterious drum. Jules gave it an experimental rat-tat-tat, and once the chasm had made a large booming noise, that was enough to give Jules encouragement to keep going. They then noticed both sets of bars retracted. Corinne was now able to get the box, but they noticed going further down the chamber Corinne had dropped down, there was a massive shark, the size of a galleon, and the water was beginning to rise. Hector, absolutely terrified of his to-be murderer, was in panic. It was only then Captain Eli Slate appeared, to which Hector requested help. Slate replied, "It was only this morning that you didn't need anything off me. This isn't about gold, it's about people, particularly on this outpost. If I help you, you will do exactly as I say." With no other option, the gold holder agrees, and Slate gets out his cutlass and almost slashes the skeleton, missing to scare him off. Slate then marched the gold holder into the tavern, where he profusely apologised, and now has a very newfound and public appreciation for the Order of Souls, and Madame Omina in particular. Slate, of course, congratulated Edmund back on the Morning Star for his brilliant part in their little scheme. They return to Plunder Outpost, where Olivia performs 3 rituals of the same type, extracting memories from skeleton heads, particularly Grey Marrows, so she may understand the new language. Afterwards, she wrote up the names of 3 islands on the parchment. However, a problem has arisen. The first island is a desolate crag, turned into a towering fortress by Flameheart's Ashen Lords. However, Jill points out one thing. They already know what they're up against, and so they begin work on modifying the Morning Star, as to breach the fortress's defences. The first phase of the plan was they rammed the fortress. This may sound stupid, but Jill had made modifications to the front of the Morning Star, removing the figurehead and changing the woodwork, designing it to absorb the full force of the impact. Then, the second phase of their plan begun. They were now close enough to the fort to not get hit by cannon fire. They dropped kegs periodically around the fort, and once they were in place, well, they blew the fort to smithereens. With many openings around and the outer defences in pieces, Slate sailed the Morning Star inside the fortress. For the third and final stage of the plan, "Weapons at the ready," Slate ordered. "It's time we introduced ourselves in person." As the temple's water rose, so did the temper of the giant Leviathan. Jules breathed, "Megalodon." Corinne grabbed the chest, then Jules and Scraps wasted no time in lowering a rope. Both of them pulling Corinne's weight was not enough though, especially with the chest. The water quickly caught up with Corinne, and she was losing her grip. In a last-ditch attempt, she started swinging to gain momentum. However, the force was so strong, the chest fell out of her grip. Immediately, Harkley prepared to leap from his platform, but he ignored Corinne's pleas and went for the chest. Corinne fell into the icy depths just moments away from being eaten. Just in the nick of time, Scraps beat the drum that summoned the beast, distracting it for just enough time for Corinne to get up. They sensed something was wrong with their captain though. He seemed distressed. He was immobilised on a large circular platform. Then the water started heating up, and the entire insides of the temple. It was like a giant kettle that the pirates were in, and so they'd no choice but to exit via leaving that Jubal spotted. Back inside the temple, the Megalodon was struggling, and the heat was just enough to cause it to back away. Harkley then stepped into the simmering water, and resurfaced moments later with the ancient chest, walking out of the temple blindly, as if hypnotised. Finding his crew exhausted and recovering over some stew that Scraps was making, Merrick volunteers to crack open the chest, which reveals a triangular-shaped object the size of a dinner plate and as thick as a ship's log, with a spear-wielding figure encrusted on each side and a pale blue gem in the middle. Merrick then enlightens them that the key slots for these type of keys are usually found beneath the seabed. Merrick also asks Scraps if he could have the drum they found, if they're done with it, and to his delight, Scraps tossed it to him, to which Merrick started making music with it, already feeling the creative juices flowing. After a brief argument between Harkley and Corinne over the incident of Harkley leaving Corinne to the Megalodon, Harkley retires to his cabin, where he notices he can no longer remove the glove off his hand, but he no longer feels pain. It was as if in a complete moment of rage and anger, all of the heat flowed into the temple from his body. What's happening to me? He didn't mean to say it out loud, nor did he expect a response, but yet one came. Rebirth. Harkley's head snapped around and was immediately kneeling before the box that one of Asdara's minions brought on board. My master, I did not know you were listening. There is little that escapes my influence. Now tell me, what of the weapon? Harkley explains it exists, and that they've secured the first key because of the power Flameheart gave him, much to the Skeleton Lord's glee, where he ordered Harkley to secure the remaining keys, and he would prepare to make sail at once. Harkley grinned, already feeling the warmth in his fingers again. The crew of the Morningstar battled long and hard as they rode into the fortress, when they came into a large cavern. Waves and waves of skeletons. After an exhausting struggle, they killed the captain of the fortress and took the key to the vault from his pocket and opened it. In there, they found a key, identical to the one that the Prideful Dawn found. After squabbling over if they should take any treasure, they heard the Morningstar's warning bell ring. Raiders were on the horizon, waiting to strike at the perfect time. Once closer, they noticed that there were two ships in an alliance battling a skeleton ship. Once disposed of, a mysterious fellow invited himself upon the Morningstar. Captain Slate, I presume. DeMarco Singh. I believe you've met my father. DeMarco explained they've been eyeing the fortress for a secret endeavour of theirs, him and his sister. It is to this that Slate offers them the vault full of loot. So, you think you've achieved a victory today? Fool! Already you've been cast unwittingly into the endgame. Edmund was down below deck and he immediately froze. There could be no other explanation. You should have learned after all this time that there are no secrets kept from me. I know of your pathetic attempt to stand against me, and you are too late. Already pirates loyal to my cause have claimed the second of the 3 keys you seek. He glanced over to the box that he saw the lid was knocked slightly ajar. Now my armada will set sail. I shall see you soon, coward. Edmund rushed above deck and exclaimed to the captain, He knows we have the key, and he knows what we're doing. He explains he shouldn't have been so stupid, and that he should have known there was more to the box than. What matters now is there is a second crew with another one of the keys. The Morningstar devises a plan for what will happen next, and Edmund explains how Flameheart exactly has been monitoring them for all this time. Slate ordered Fontaine to find the speaking trumpet. As he decreed, their business with the Sings has not quite ended yet. Now it was Slate's turn to board DeMarco's ship, taking with him an object that he stressed to the siblings should be kept safe at all costs. As they turned to leave, Edmund requested a moment with Slate, however. He says, My true name is not Edmund. In fact, I haven't used it in years. As I told you, Flameheart believes it is his right to be king of the Sea of Thieves, and so it pleased him greatly to give his most trusted lieutenants regal-sounding names. The 4 Ashen Lords, the Duchess, and so on. I was considered among their number, and so encouraged to adopt the name he gave me. And if there are to be no more secrets, I feel you should know this. I see. Slate leaned forward. Then your preferred name is? Call me Duke, the skeleton replied. The crew of the Prideful Dawn were naturally in a hurry. After hearing the Morningstar had acquired one of the keys, they were rushing to the third one. However, they saw the Morningstar also going for it, As they drew closer, Slate addressed the ship with the speaking trumpet, stating that the Prideful one was reported to be commandeered from the dock of Golden Sands just a few days ago by a crew with some unorthodox opinions. He goes on, "It's safe to assume we both know why each other are out on the waves. Therefore, I propose a parley." They show each other they do indeed possess a key, and go on to agree a parley, weapons forbidden, ships on each side of the island, crew sitting facing the ships, etc. Hartley requests one more thing, that his crew may cook some stew for all of them, to which Slate accepts. After his crew question what his plan is, he says quietly in Scrap's ear, "It's time we talked about dinner." The crew of the Prideful Dawn and the Morning Star have a debate about recent affairs, more importantly, their common purpose. When it comes to dishing out the food, naturally, they give some to Korean Jules first to prove it's not poisoned. They then dish out the rest of the Morning Star. They continue the debate, but something's wrong. Slate yawned and was struggling to keep upright. "You would poison your own crew." "No, not poison. That would send you to the Ferry of the Damned, and who knows where you'd end up. No, you're going to take a nice long nap." As Slate heard the thud of Jules and Corinne, he was out too. Now the Prideful Dawn's plan was in motion. Scraps were running over to the Morning Star. Hartley heaved Grinning Jules through the waters to the boat. He was about to make preparations to get underway, but he realised something was very, very wrong. The Prideful Dawn was dying. Scraps clambered aboard the Morning Star and started to look around, but something was very odd. The captain's cabin was empty. Save for some standard furniture, and on further inspection of the boat's decks, he found nothing. It all sunk in when he looked at the ship's nameplate. This was not the Morning Star. He rushed back to see the Prideful Dawn in shambles, even with the fire out. He woke Corinne Jules with an antidote, and they immediately got to work hectically trying to restore the Prideful Dawn. After all the repairs were made, Hartley accused Scraps of betrayal, saying he did this and it was his fault. He asked for the key to prove him wrong, but Scraps explained he doesn't have it, because that's not the Morning Star. In a booming laugh, Hartley shows their key has been taken from their chest. He says Scraps is a liar, and as it's his responsibility to serve punishment. A great roaring ashen wind erupted around him, and Scraps screamed. You could see swirls of green light coming from his mouth, and Hartley slammed them into the chest. Horrified, Corinne Jules demand what he's done, and Hartley replies, "Confinement for the soul." The two pirates saw what had covered Hartley's arm was burned away in Scraps' execution, and where there was once his healthy human arm was now laid bare as nothing but ash-coloured bone, the price of loyalty. Duke explains Slate has been out for a few hours, and that he snuck aboard all according to plan, stealing their key and wreaking havoc. It's also revealed that the ship was a decoy, and was DeMarco Singh's. Now is the question of the final key. Duke reveals Dinger inadvertently reminded him of a trick that Flameheart taught him that will help to locate the final key. With a few adjustments, a simple compass can be turned into a wayfinder, a compass that instead of north will point towards treasuries of the ancients, so if the key is in a vault, it'll find it. The crew of the Morning Star set sail for Kraken's Fall, the location of the final key in the wilds. The compass leads them to a stone circle, where it looks like it needs a capstan handle in the middle. Joel managed to forge a makeshift handle to turn it, and the Morning Star all started heaving. They noticed they were getting taller. In fact, they just raised the structure from the sand. Slate finds a hidden panel, when clicked, revealed an entrance. Whilst Slate, Jill, Dinger and Fontaine look for the key in the chamber, Duke grabs his books and starts making notes on the runes that adorn the structure, thinking that it gives us information as to how to use the keys. Eventually, the crew of the Morning Star come to a large chasm with a vaulted ceiling, 4 stone columns, and some form of tablet in the middle with 4 braziers. They light the braziers out of curiosity, and the door slams shut behind them, and the columns come to life. In the middle on the stone tablet, it now depicts a rock painting. They realise this is a puzzle. Fontaine recalls that the blocks are constellations, and he remembers an old eccentric with a love of stars, telling him stories he claimed were from the ancients. He starts reciting it, and in chronological order they order the blocks. Once they've done it, they press the large stone button, and not only is the exit open, but the vault's treasury. There is the final key. Once they make it back up to the surface, however, on the horizon they saw the sails of the Burning Blade, as Captain Flameheart had found them. Slate says he'll stay behind and distract their forces for as long as possible, although before he does, he requires 2 things. Aboard the Burning Blade, Flameheart is reflecting on his life. This is soon interrupted, however, when they see a volley of cannon somewhere from the top of the island. Flameheart orders them to change course, and now they're headed for Kraken's Fall. Slate, now up against an entire army, clambers on top of the structure and uses his Eye of Reach. Flameheart's skeletons grab him and seize him. After a brief conversation with the Skeleton Lord, Slate states that this is merely an invitation, and that the challenge would be a duel between them. Not wanting to look weak, and after more brief conversation about before Flameheart's time, and a comment from Flameheart about perhaps destroying Golden Sands one day, probably nothing, right? The two begin to spar. Slate leads Flameheart into the chamber, and thus the vault where he ends up being entrapped, after he lights the 4 braziers again. When Flameheart refuses to kill him, however, and instead take him prisoner, Slate grabs a snake out of his jacket, which, being furious of being in there all this time, bites him, and Slate dies. When Slate opened his eyes, he was already on the deck of the ferry, for few remember anything before that. Something was off though. He waited and waited, he couldn't say for how long, but the portal to send him back was closed off. He approached the ferryman and said, "No, my portal shall not open for you this time, Eli Slate of the Morning Star. For your destiny lies elsewhere. Events are now in motion, so we must chart a new course upon these unending waves." The ferryman gave the wheel a sharp turn. "Now hold your tongue, for I require concentration. These are unfamiliar waters even to me. If we fail to find our way, there will be a heavy price to pay." "Price?" Eli replied. "What kind of price?" "The price of 4 lost souls, Captain," the ferryman informed him gravely. "The lives of those aboard the Morning Star." Duke has now managed to translate the runes, bring the 3 keys to the heart of the key. The crew of the Morning Star, or what was left of it, quickly deciphers this puzzle, with the 3 islands the keys were found on being marked on the map. The centre is an uncharted island. When they got there, they could tell why no one bothered to chart the place. There'd be no point. It was a desolate place with practically nothing there. Jill spots an opening in the water, and so they dive with the keys. After what felt like an age, they emerge up in a large circular cavern, with ancient pillars dotted around. Most notably, a table in the room with 3 triangular indentations. There was also a towering square archway in the centre. Fontaine put the first key in, and a massive burst of light erupted from the centre. The gems started pulsing as if beating. Jill put hers in next, and again another burst of light. The archway seemed to come alive. Finally, Dinger, another burst of light, this time accompanied by the archway flaring up. "Magic door," Dinger said. There really wasn't any other way to describe it. Through this portal, you could see a corridor of ancient design, far less weathered than anything they'd seen so far. They went through, and the cave collapsed behind them, shutting the portal off. They cautiously ventured, and came up through a stone well, all of ancient architecture. They came up to what could only be described as an indoor market, with stalls selling everything one could possibly imagine. It was only when they stepped outside that reality truly hit them. They were in a massive port town. And the market they were just in was snuck up against a massive jungle. If it weren't for the foreboding twilight sky, it could have passed as one in the Mediterranean. Dinger makes the acknowledgement that they are certainly by the ocean, but where the hell were they? To that, Captain Eli Slate replied, "The Sea of the Damned." After a bombardment of questions to their captain, Slate began to explain that the ancients had the power to move between the Sea of Thieves and the Sea of the Damned as they pleased. The place they're in is an afterimage, a memory of an ancient civilization. So he goes on, "The ancients were master builders and craftsmen, though much of what they created has been lost to time. One of their achievements was a weapon so mighty its creator chose it to hide away. Where better to store a weapon capable of such mass destruction than in the Sea of the Damned?" Slate revealed a friend gave him an ancient lantern to find out the truth about this ancient outpost. The crew then saw it, the ancient secret weapon. A great gleaming warship, kitted out with weapons and defences like nothing else. A massive towering ship bigger than any galleon of ancient design. sleek and in pristine condition, simple sail and flag designs, but a force to be reckoned with. If there's any ship that will match the Burning Blade, it'll be her. They noticed an ancient clambering aboard her, putting a totem in place, but they thought nothing much of it. It was still there when they boarded, however. They named her the Ophelia. As they prepared to make sail, Dinger asked how they were meant to get back out of this godforsaken place, to which Slate gestured over the side, where the ferry of the damned erupted out of the waves. True to his duty, the ferryman had come to guide them home. None of them could agree on the precise moment they returned to the land of the living, but when they did, they found themselves by the morning star, a bittersweet sight. Something was wrong though. There were raiders. When caught, it happened to be Jules and Corinne, who pleaded they weren't trying to save anything, only to find the crew and that they've been gone for over 3 days. Time moves differently in the Sea of the Damned. They asked to help in the war against Flameheart and explain what Hartley's become and what he did to Scraps. Slate accepts, as they could use a few extra hands. It's revealed that the name of the boat is based off Fontaine's sister, their old 4th crew member, who went missing after she stood up to Slate, demanding he be more active in the war against Flameheart, and subsequently left. As they prepare for battle, Joel finds some strange orbs below deck. They looked like cannonballs, but they had pale green and vibrant auric swirls inside. High atop an archway, DeMarco Singh stood with his spyglass, looking at the big galleon-shaped cloud in the sky. I suppose that's as good a signal as anything, he thought. He then ordered his crew, as he thought. That powder's not going to carry itself. As the Ophelia sailed into battle, they could see the results of Flameheart's wrath, with too many ships under the Pirate Lord's flag to count. Battle ensued, skeleton ships bombarding the Ophelia this way and that, but the ship of the Ancients was securing victories. Ship after ship was sunk, and more pirate legions joined the fight, making more daring moves as the time passed by. But then green smoke could be seen out of one of the skeleton ship's cannons. Once fired, hit the Ophelia. The totem the Ancient put on board in the Sea of the Damned pulsed, and nothing happened. Amazing, Duke said. The totem completely undid the effects of the cursed cannonball. With a massive advantage now in hand, Flameheart's crew stuck to more traditional cannonballs now. But even still, the war was being won in the Pirate Lord's favour, with Flameheart yelling insults and threats throughout the battle. Finally, Slate decided it was time for a final assault on the Burning Blade, but his order was drowned out as they watched another vessel rise from the sea, the Prideful Dawn. They rammed, and the ancient armour that served them so well started to buckle, but there was no time to assess the damage, as a great shadowy figure leapt onto the Ophelia. The Ashen Lord that had once been Harry Hartley hurtled into the fight. The Ashen Lord wreaked havoc on the ship, and a dangerous fight ensued. Mast was set on fire, and it looked like the Ashen Lord would win, but then Jules struck the totem with a mysterious bracelet she had, which sent pulses of energy across the boat. The totem that dispelled any evil curse, including the likes of being turned into an Ashen Lord. Each pulse sending a tremendous pain into the fiery giant. Hartley sank to his knees as the fire inside him began to flicker and fade. Chop, chop, chop. He was tossed into a nightmare, and he was back in his family home. Chop. The cold and gloom gnawed at his bones. Chop. The fireplace was his responsibility. It always has been, and he could sense his mother's fear at what would happen next. Harry, you little wretch! I warned you what would happen if you let the fire die! Was the voice his father's, Flameheart's? It didn't matter. This was a dream, and he could still wake up. With the last of his energy, he sprung onto the Ophelia's capstan, tearing it apart, and with it, the totem. Close, but not close enough! He roared as he prepared to end the ship's life. The Burning Blade were watching this assault, and it was when Captain Adara delivered the good news to Flameheart that Harry had destroyed the power to withstand curses that Flameheart grinned. Make sail immediately, and we shall destroy anyone who stands in our way. Through all the excitement was a shard of ice somewhere within his fiery chest, one of doubt. Ever since he learned of weapons beyond his power, the shard turned colder. To even acknowledge the possibility of defeat, it was impossible. It showed weakness, it was madness. And yet on the eve of battle, Captain Flameheart gathered his lieutenants and shared exactly what must happen should his defeat become reality. Back on the Ophelia, the Ashen Lord dropped to his knees again, but this time fire erupted all around him, and in the sky a fiery storm erupted, sending volcanic boulders down from the heavens, raining fire and ash down upon everyone. Jill, who was in the crow's nest, used quick thinking and slashed the mast's ropes, sending it hurtling down on top of Harkley, then bear-hugging him and sending the two of them overboard. When she came back on board and asked about another assault, Slate gave the order to abandon ship, as the boat is too far gone for a fight. When they turned to the rowboat though, it had disappeared, and with it, so had one of their number. Duke. Flameheart had almost reached his prey. Captain Adara came storming into his cabin without knocking, though the reason became clear. There, between two skeletal crewmen, was Duke. "Release him," Flameheart ordered. Duke was left alone with Flameheart, and they discussed old times. We see a more personal side to Flameheart here. For Duke being so old, Flameheart almost appears vulnerable and kind, sharing a game of chess with Duke that he hasn't touched in years as a reminder of their friendship. They speak about the mysterious boxes Flameheart created. "One of each of your most faithful lieutenants," Duke went on, "handcrafted from mysterious arcana that none of us really understood. They became one of the most sought-after treasures in the Sea of Thieves, as I recall. Pirates named them boxes of wondrous secrets, even though few people understood their purpose. Communication." He goes on to explain that no matter the distance, it's as simple as putting new orders inside the captain's lockbox. Flameheart explains that which give can also receive. He began collecting tribute from those who were worthy of serving of him. He soon realised he could hear whatever was nearby a box, an advantage Flameheart surrendered when revealing himself to Duke. "No matter," Flameheart said. "When you worked it out, you threw the box away." "Check," Duke said. "Try as you might," Flameheart replied. "You have one move left before checkmate." He got up. When Duke, however, did not follow and Flameheart tried to accuse him of stalling for time, he saw Duke had his hand on the captain's lockbox. "I didn't throw anything away." Flameheart, now enraged, said, "What do you mean? Answer me!" Duke pulled back the lid of the captain's lockbox. "Your biggest problem, Captain, has always been that you never can hold your tongue. Once we understood the means by which you've been taunting me, Slate and I decided to gather some tribute of our own, to be placed in your box of wondrous secrets, so that like any other offering, it would end up here. While the lid is open, of course, I can be heard quite clearly. Now, Master Singh." Duke gave a mighty grunt of effort and tipped the lockbox onto its side. Immediately a torrent of fine granules began to pour forth. Flameheart, now angrier than ever, said, "What is this foolishness?" "A message, of course," Duke replied. "A message to the new king from all those pirates, shopkeepers, shipwrights and merchants across the Sea of Thieves who know that our freedom is more than just a dream. Delivered to one spot by an alliance of ships from every outpost. Unless you are speaking literally, in which case, it's lots and lots of gunpowder. What's coronation without fireworks?" Flameheart gave an enraged bellow and shoved Duke aside, slamming the lid of the lockbox shut. But it's too late to prevent the torrent of deadly powder from coating every deck of his ship. "You won't do this! You can't!" he screamed, with an unfamiliar note of fear in his words. "Our kind! We won't! You'll die too!" Duke moved to the chessboard, peering down at the clustered pieces in the candlelight one last time before placing his king on its side and making his pronouncement. "I resign," he informed Captain Flameheart. "Stop the clock." And then Duke knocked the candle over. Jill felt rather than saw the explosion, a great shockwave that capsized the Ophelia. She awakened on an unfamiliar ship full of pirates rescued from the battle. After the burning blade had gone up in smoke, the remaining skeleton ships were in disarray. The Pirate Lord's forces finished them off. It's revealed that it was Duke's idea to put the box of wondrous secrets on board DeMarco's ship as a backup plan in case Flameheart destroyed the ancient weapon. As much as he wanted to make amends for past actions, however, Jill never expected him to sacrifice himself. Once back at Sanctuary, the tales of the Ophelia and ancient warships circulated, and people wondered who captained her. It was soon the general consensus that the Pirate Lord was at her helm and captaining a crew of phantoms. The Georgian Kraken Tavern was brimming with life that night, as many crews celebrated the defeat of the worst enemy of the Sea of Thieves. Corinne and Jules parted ways with the Morning Star. They're going to start a search for Scraps, for he's still out there somewhere. As the night went on, the The mysterious stranger informed them that the Pirate Lord again wishes to speak with them. And as happened at the start of our tale, they were led down into the Athena's Fortune hideout to meet with Ramsay by the dock. There they see it, the Morning Star restored and resupplied to its former glory, which Ramsay informs was his doing. They're free to set sail for adventure after Ramsay congratulates them, but he mentions they'll be keeping Duke's notes for who knows whenever they might need to relocate something like that again. They had a grand adventure that's now ending, but another one is only just beginning. Jill's new position aboard the Morning Star. They set sail for adventure as Jill charts course. The events after Heart of Fire are well known to a lot of us. Captain Adara survived the blast, for she was looking in the rowboat that Duke travelled in. She transported Flameheart's body onto her Ashen Dragon, along with old Horatio, who is there to guide them. They ran into some issues though, as we know through the events of Seabound Soul. They were quickly sorted out, however, with the Ashen Lord's power who bound their souls. Flameheart survived by doing something very cunning. Not even the Pirate Lord could expect it. He reversed the soul-binding ritual on himself. He could escape judgment from the Ferry of the Damned, for his soul was trapped within his own remains, waiting to be awakened one day. After Flameheart had been entombed, old Horatio used the last of his power to guide Captain Adara through the shroud, and then he was reduced to nothing but ash as a massive storm erupted around him, but then faded. With no more Horatio to guide them and no more orders to follow, Captain Adara ordered her skeletons to bury themselves deep into the soil of ash, as she herself dug her own grave. One day she would awaken again, but for now they must sleep. Already there was someone who peered into the box of wondrous secrets, with the seed planted in their head to reawaken Flameheart once more. Something was off. Duke swore death didn't feel like this. It was too pleasant. But then he awoke on the Ferry of the Damned. It was weird to see his human form once more. He thought there must have been some kind of mix-up. I suppose it was possible with the amount of lost souls that the ferryman would have been transporting. But then he asked the ferryman what happened. He says that he's supposed to be utterly destroyed, reduced to dust, quite probably. The ferryman replies, perhaps it should be so, but apparently there was an intervention. Duke is surprised at this, but pleasantly surprised. The ferryman explains their unusual circumstances, but it has been decided that his actions aboard the Burning Blade were pure spirit, and so despite his many dark deeds in Flameheart's name, presented by the possibility of redemption, he's been instructed to offer Duke, some would call it a second chance, to find the freedom he desires, and to play his part in that is yet to shape the Sea of Thieves. Duke is surprised by this, and he says that he's sure Slate and the others will be happy to know he survived. The ferryman interjects, however, and he explains that that's not meant to be, and his recollection of his time upon the Sea of Thieves should be stripped away from the moment he steps across his threshold, save for his name, and it'll be if he is a new arrival to the Sea of Thieves. As for the crew of the Morning Star, the ferryman goes on, quite some time has passed in the living world, and things are not as they were for Slate and his crew, a burden I shall attend to in time. Duke wastes no time going through the portal. He can't wait to get on with his new life. The ferryman gives a warning, however. A chance is not a guarantee, he explains. It's not my place to herald the future, but I would warn you, freedom always has its price. Duke didn't quite know what to make of this, but anyway, he stepped across the threshold, and so his new life began. In a tavern, we're not sure where, but in the Sea of Thieves, it was there that Duke had met Faisal and Lorena, the founders of the Bilge Rats. They passed a grog to him and asked, "So, you'd like to test your mettle with the Bilge Rats? We're not like the other trading companies, you know. We're all about embracing the days when things don't go to plan. Think you can handle that kind of excitement?" Duke nodded and sat back contentedly, already feeling at ease with a drink in his hand and the soothing warmth of the tavern's fireplace, while Lorena began to talk of distant shores, incredible sights, and all of the grand adventures that tomorrow would bring. This, he thought with satisfaction, is what being a pirate is all about.